Hey, welcome back, everyone. As you may have already noticed, I have been on a little bit of a hiatus. I would love to say that it was due to the holidays, but on November 20th, my father passed away, and he has been my long-term mentor and, really the premise behind starting this show and sharing what I've learned. So today, I just felt like it would be fitting to share with you the three things that I learned from him early on in marriage that have helped Crystal and I be successful. So, three things coming up. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Husband's Coach's Corner, the podcast that teaches husbands how to love their wife every day and become better men in the process. I'm your host, Chris Scott, aka the Husband Coach.
Okay. Like I mentioned at the top of the show or in the introduction, we're going to be covering three things, and then there's going to be a drill at the end. So the very first thing that I learned from my father, growing up and even as a young newlywed, is be patient always and give your wife grace. No matter what, always be patient and give your wife grace. Now, I'd be lying if I told you that my father was always patient and always graceful. But I would say 8 times to 9 times out of 10, he was patient and graceful with his wife, even with his children, me included, but my 2 other sisters, or really my 2 older sisters. He was really patient with all 4 of us. And that's a very important thing to learn. Patience, period. But being patient with our wives. See, it's easy to get upset with our wife, but you have to do your best to show her that you love her. And one of the best ways to do that is to be slow to anger. Case in point, you don't like when people are angry at you. And if you are one of those people who say, I don't care if people are angry at me, well, the truth is, you would prefer them not to be angry at you. And the same case holds true with your wife. Your wife doesn't want you to be angry at her. She wants to do things that honor you, that, are pleasing to you, in not a chauvinistic sort of way, but in a very loving and genuine sort of way. So you have to learn to be slow to anger, and you got to be patient with your wife. See, one of the things that leads us to not being patient is we're always in a rush to getting something done. Part of this is our culture, our society. We get messages instantly. News that used to take days to travel around the world now takes seconds. So in our culture and our mindset, we just think instant. So when it's time to go, and this is where men typically are the least patient, is you knew that we were leaving and you're still not ready. So what I suggest in that case is prepare yourself and the family to leave with buffer time before you actually expect to leave. This is super helpful. And, this can be a conversation that you have with your wife. If this is something that you really struggle with, you can say, hey, look, I'm going to build in 10 to 15 minutes of additional time. In the event that you need more time, I need you to say so that way we can be on the same sheet of music. But at the same time, I also need you, and, this is how you can express this in a loving way. I also need you to make sure that you stick to the plan and the timeline. And most wives are going to be open and receptive to that. But when she's not, you have a choice either to get upset or to be patient and go find something else to do. So that way, when she does get ready, you can take off. There are very few places that if you're late, the worst things happen, right? Most of the time, if you're late, it's more of an embarrassment. that you showed up after everyone else. But, obviously the environment that we're in right now, parties aren't really happening. But I used to get impatient with my wife because we were going to social gatherings, parties, and stuff like that. And it was like, man, you know what? It doesn't even matter, because even though we got there 20, 30 minutes after the party started, there were people showing up 15 minutes before the party was supposed to end. So, it's not that serious. All right. And the last note that I have here on being patient, in situations where your wife makes you mad, just forgive her instantly. Make a decision right now that you're going to be patient. And as soon as there's a situation where your patience is tested, what I really want you guys to do, and this helped me out dramatically, or, a lot. As soon as I felt impatient, I instantly said, you know what? It's okay. I forgive her. I'm just going to go sit down and watch a TV show, or, hop on YouTube for a second, whatever. Instantly forgive your wife. Don't hold on to it. Because when you hold on to it, it becomes this long-term frustration, which then bleeds into other things. And when you have these arguments, you may bring that stuff up, and it's not something that needs to be brought up in most cases. So as soon as your patience is tested, forgive your wife instantly. All right. You do need to address the situation. This is not me saying be passive about the issue at hand. What I'm saying is forgive, and then have a conversation from a genuine standpoint of, look, honey, this bothers me, and I really need you to help me by doing X, Y, Z. Don't tell her she has to do something. Make it a partnership, and you will get a lot further. All right. Now, this third note for patience is really going to come in when we talk about the drill, which is centered around patience today. All right. The second thing that I learned from my father: have fun. There are so many couples that I have encountered, so many husbands that I've encountered, that they forget that their wife is their friend. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hang out with my friends, I like to have fun, right? We joke, we play, we laugh, we have fun. Your wife is your friend. Have fun with her, all right? And I'm talking beyond the bedroom. Sex is great, but I'm saying, why not play card games? Why not play board games? Why not do silly things? Like, what would you normally do with a friend, and include your wife in that? This is like twofold. I remember just being a young kid, and my dad would come home, and he would sneak in the back door, or, into the house necessarily, not always the back door, but he would sneak in, and I would see him, and he knew that when he came home, I would run and greet him, but he would put his hand up and he would tell me to be quiet, like putting the finger over his lips and saying, hey, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And then he would find my mom, and he would just start tickling her, and she didn't know he was in the house. And it was just such a surprise for her. And she really enjoyed that. And I talked to my mom about that while, I was with my family during the funeral times and things. And, she was like, yeah, I really remember that. And those were spontaneous, fun moments. And, she really appreciates that. So having fun with your wife builds a memory, and that memory will be cherished well beyond your lifetime here on earth, should your wife survive you. So have fun with your wife is extremely important. Now, I do have a few more notes on having fun. One, you want to laugh with your wife. So knock knock jokes, silly dad jokes, anything that's not necessarily directed towards your wife, because we don't want to make fun of each other. That is potentially toxic for the relationship. But instead, watch a comedy show. Well, I guess you can't necessarily go to a comedy show right now, but in the future, go to some comedy shows. But nonetheless, find ways to laugh with your wife. And this isn't anything new. I've talked about this. I learned this lesson early on in our marriage. So every day I try to at least get my wife to smile and giggle. You're not going to have like these amazing memories every single day. It's just not going to happen, but that's okay. All right. The next note that I have: make memories that bring both of you joy. See, when you tie a memory to laughter, or when you laugh, it becomes a memory. You remember, most of what happened in that situation, or bare minimum, you remember he makes me laugh or she makes me laugh, right? These are the things that you want to develop in your relationship, and you want to develop a lot of these. This is why, for me, it's important to make my wife laugh every day, because when I'm gone, the memory that she has of me is that her husband loved her and he always made me laugh. Now, sometimes I make my wife laugh and I'm not even trying, right? She laughs at me when I start cooking. Not that I'm a bad cook, but I cook differently than her, and it's funny to her because it's odd. So some ways that you can try and make your wife laugh is do something out of the ordinary that's odd, and it will absolutely work. Actually, just yesterday, we were playing Uno Attack and with the family. And I don't even remember necessarily why I did this, but I did a silly dance on the way back from the kitchen getting some coffee. And my wife she cracked up laughing. And she's like, do it again. And, I was like, oh man, well, now I feel embarrassed, like, cause I wasn't necessarily doing it for the attention. But she enjoyed it so much that I went ahead and I did it again. That split, or, those few seconds that we shared, obviously the entire family was there, but I was really doing it for my wife. That is a memory she's going to hold. And it worked out because I was able to make her laugh yesterday, So those are situations that you want to look for and you want to capitalize on as much as you possibly can. Now, the last note that I have is relax and enjoy spending time with your wife. See, going back to that particular situation from yesterday, the silly dance, I enjoyed spending time with my wife because we were playing a card game, Uno Attack. Now, obviously, our daughters were sitting at the table with us. We were all playing. It was family time. But, going back to the physical touch, I found ways of incorporating that in our card playing where, I rubbed on her arm or her leg, just letting her know, hey, I'm here. I love you. We're connecting and we're having a good time. And I'm enjoying this time with you. That's one of the ways that I let her know, by giving her physical touch while we're playing the card game, appropriate physical touch in front of the kids, obviously. But, if we can pause for a second, my daughters are seeing what it looks like to have a man who loves his wife. This is, the old saying, your children marry, or your daughters marry their fathers, or someone who acts like their father, thing like that, right? I want my daughters to see a man who is treating his wife in a manner that is respectful, loving, caring, intimate, so they can have successful and beautiful marriages. So it's important that you put it on display for your children to see. And if you have sons, then as a man, you're being that role model as my father was. So when they become husbands, they can treat their wives in the exact same way that you treated your wife, right? And then this becomes a generational blessing because then their kids will see them treating their wives that way, and then they'll develop relationships along that same path. So very important. Relax, or coming back to the note on having fun, relax and enjoy spending the time with your wife, be it on the couch, on a drive. I'm a terrible singer. We went driving looking at Christmas lights, and my wife, she loves it when I sing songs to her. And I don't know why, because I can't sing, but she really does love it. And the kids know that I can't sing and they don't like it. So they're sitting in the back seat and they're like, no, stop, Dad, please don't do it. And my wife is just smiling with joy when I'm singing these terrible Christmas songs. I won't hurt you guys' ears with that. But the point that I'm trying to make here is enjoy the time, no matter how short that period is. It could be a minute, it could be an hour. Just enjoy the time that you're spending with your wife, and you'll naturally have fun and build those memories that speak to your character and where you are in your relationship. So again, when you are gone and your wife survives you, those are the things that she'll remember about you. Maybe not all the situations, but she'll remember that you made her laugh and you had fun. All right. Very important. It's a legacy. Now, on to the third thing. I learned from my father that it is important to fight tirelessly to keep your marriage healthy. My father, he had his struggles and he was not a perfect man. Growing up, my dad had some challenges, and it bled into the marriage, and it made my mom miserable. But then my father matured. He became a man about his business. He became a man about his family. And it was a night and day difference from the man he was to the man that he became. And that was just a beautiful transformation. Now, the significance to this is he could have easily just said, you know what? I'm a deadbeat. I'm not going to be a good father. I'm not going to be a good husband. I might as well just give it up and throw in the towel. Now, some of you may feel that way right now. Listening to this episode, you may be like, I'm looking for as much help as I possibly can so I can make our marriage better, make my marriage better, fight for my marriage. But everything I try, it's just not working. Look, if you don't hear anything else out of this episode today, what I want you to hear is that you have to fight tirelessly to save your marriage. It doesn't matter if it looks like it's working right now or doesn't look like it's working. You have to keep going. You have to keep putting in the work every single day. Success is only bought for one day, and it's bought with your hard effort with building your relationship. Now, over time, success becomes a little bit easier each day because you have the tools to get to success on that day. But if you are in a place right now where your marriage is seemingly in shambles, and you're genuinely struggling just to have a basic conversation with your wife, what I want you to know is you can make it through this. And if you continue to work on your marriage and you fight tirelessly, you will make it through this. But your marriage isn't going to get better overnight, because in most cases, your marriage was not destroyed overnight. It was destroyed over time, or it never had the foundation to build well enough. So when a single issue came about, it was easy to break the marriage and get you into a situation where you feel like it's better off just divorcing her. And the truth of the matter is, it's not, especially if there's kids involved. So it's so important that you fight tirelessly for your marriage. Like, you have to put in the work as if you were saving lives. It's that serious. Now, I do have a few more notes on fighting tirelessly. The first one being, you did good yesterday, but now you have to put in the work today. I've already said that success is only bought for the day, and every day you have to put in the work. Now, what I mean by this is, you're not always going to have a great day with your wife, right? My wife and I, we argue and we have challenges, we have issues, we got situations. It's life, right? Roller coaster ride. But here's the deal. When those situations come up, those challenges come up, I'm ready to put in the work to get through those challenges, because I have developed the skills and the tools to communicate effectively and in a way that resonates with my wife, so that we can go beyond whatever that challenge is. So, and the cool thing is, we have both developed these skills so that when an issue comes up, we can attack it, and it usually doesn't last longer than a day. So by the end of that day, we've already worked through it, or at least we're on the path to recovery from that situation, that I can still count that day as successful, because my partner, my wife, my friend, and I have come up with a plan that's going to get us to success eventually, right? So it is so important that you put in the work every single day. And the cool thing is, we're talking in the larger scheme, at least at this point, the 5 love languages. Those love languages, they speak to something called the love tank, right? The more you have in the tank, the more you can pull out and, you can withdraw from and utilize. It's like a bank, right? The more money you put into the bank, when you have a situation, you can pull out some of that money and go take care of that situation. And then you got to put more money back into the bank. Otherwise, if you keep pulling out, it gets empty. And when it gets empty, you start to get these overdraft fees. And that means you got to put even more work in, or more money in, just to get back to the $0 amount, or the neutral amount for your account. All right. And if you overdraft your account too many times, your account will most likely get closed out by that bank. Same concept happens in our marriage. The more that we take and we don't invest or put in the work every day to show our wives that we love her, it's why it's the tagline for this show, that we're going to find a way to love our wife every single day. It's so we're investing into that love tank. So when a situation comes up, we have something to withdraw from there. Because, guys, let me tell you, if you are in a situation where you're fighting for your marriage and you have not invested into that love tank, you're doing it wrong. All right. That's just me being 100% honest with you. If you have not invested into that love tank, you are doing it wrong. So make sure that you are working every day to invest in that love tank so you have something to withdraw from. All right. Now, the next note that I have is don't let your pride keep you from getting help with your marriage, especially if you need it. Now, it is always beneficial to have a third party person come in and just be a helping hand, a friend that is going to move your relationship into the positive relationship that you're looking for. You have to choose someone who has your best interest in mind and your wife's best interest in mind. A professional third-party person, a counselor. If you are a person of faith, your minister or your pastor, going to your church, your congregation, and asking them for assistance on this. That is always a better option than trying to tough it out on your own and you struggle with it. Now, this podcast is a great tool and resource that you can use. If you're applying these drills, you're getting something that you can use every single day to show your wife that you love her and invest in that love tank. But you may need someone that you can talk to and really have a conversation with about your specific situation. All right. And that's where the limitations of this podcast are currently. So, you want to find someone that you can speak to. So don't be so prideful that you don't go get the help from a third party person that you really need to come in and have a conversation with you and coach you through it intentionally. All right. Don't be prideful. And then the last note that I have on fighting tirelessly is find a mentor that has your best interest in mind and share regularly. You see, there's a proverb in the Bible that says, as iron sharpens iron, another man sharpens another man. It is so important that you have someone that is on your side. Now, I spoke about this briefly, but I really want to go into a little bit more detail about this. You see, my father, like I said, he started out with some challenges and he ended up getting a mentor. And his mentor helped him with a lot of things, but showed him what it meant to be a family man. And that's when my father really started to mature. You see, change happens when either someone forces you to make the change or so much has happened in your life that you choose to make the change. That's when change happens, right? Well, my father was at both of those points. He was forced to make the change if he wanted to continue living with us. And then he had made so many mistakes and hurt so many people along the way that he didn't even realize it. I talked to him about this years later, obviously, because I was a kid when this was all happening. But years later, I interviewed my father, essentially, and he told me there came a point that I had no idea what it was like to be a man with a family. I knew what it was like to be a boy with a bunch of things, and I knew that, you got to go to work and pay bills. These are things that our society teaches us. But what our society doesn't teach us, and this is where community comes in, is it doesn't teach us how to love our families. It doesn't teach us how to be a husband. They encourage marriage, but where is the guidance on what it looks like to be in a marriage? And that doesn't come from our society, at least in a positive way. It may come from our TV show, our culture, and things of that sort. But you look at a lot of the TV shows, today, not back then, but today, a lot of the TV shows are blended families where the family was married and then there was a divorce, or there was no marriage whatsoever, and kids are involved. There's TV shows about polygamy. So our society is sending a very mixed message in a progressive agenda way. So where do husbands learn to become husbands? From other husbands who are already walking it. That's where. And that's why you have to find someone who has your best interest in mind and is going to help you get to the place in your marriage that you're looking to get. All right. And that's going to be, someone that you have to speak with on a regular basis. You can't talk to this person once a month. I would say you need to talk to this person at least 3 times a month. I talk to my dad every week, sometimes multiple times in the week. Not always about the marriage, but, I would talk to him and ask questions because there's still things that I'm learning about marriage. I'm not some expert at this. I've been married to my wife for 13 years, and we have a wonderful marriage. But again, early on in our marriage, it was terrible. It was terrible. Crystal will tell you, I was not a good husband. And for what it's worth, she was not a good wife. We had an idea of what it looked like to be married, but we had no real context to what it means to be a husband and a wife. So we hurt each other, and we hurt each other bad. Now I'm thankful to say that we recovered from those situations. But moral of the story, you have to fight tirelessly for your marriage, and you have to find someone who has your best interest in mind. My father, he had the best interest for our marriage in mind from the day that my wife and I got married. And that's something that I am truly thankful for. Now, those were the 3 things that I learned, but I do have a bonus thing. And that bonus note is pray for your wife ferociously. Now, this goes along with fighting for your marriage tirelessly. And if you're a believer in Christ, a person of faith, you have to pray for your wife. All right. It is so important that you pray for, just being thankful that she's there, praying for her safety, her wisdom, and for her healing with issues that you may have caused or physical issues that she's going through. It's just so important that we pray for our wives. I pray for my wife every day. Every single day, I pray for my wife. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into the drill for the week. And as I mentioned before, it's about patience. I titled this drill, Find Your Patience, right? It's very straightforward. I'm just going to read the instructions and then we'll wrap up the episode. So, part 1 to finding your patience. The first step, you need to assess your patience level on a scale of 1 to 10 with your wife. 1 being the lowest amount of patience and 10 being the highest, all right? So you choose your number, 1 through 10, where you think you rate yourself. And then you ask your wife to do the same thing, all right? Take those 2 numbers, add them together, and then divide them by 2. This is going to give you your average number of where you think you are and where your wife thinks you are. Typically, what happens here is you think you're higher up on the scale, and your wife thinks you're lower on the scale. So you end up with a pretty decent average, right? Not an exact science, but the drill will help you hone in a little bit better here in a second. Now, if your number is 1 through 4, then obviously you got some work to do with your patients. And you would consider yourself to be in the poor patients category. Not anything necessarily wrong with this if you are willing to put in the work to move your score higher. All right. Now, if you are 100% okay with being in the poor category, then you need to reassess what it is that you want to do in your marriage and where your goals are as a husband. All right. Now, if your number is a 5 through a 7, then you're doing good, but you need to find a few things to tighten up on. And typically, there's 2 things when it comes to patience, right? There is your word selection and there is your body language. So if you are in the poor category, you are probably bad at both your body language and your word selection because your wife picks up on all this stuff, right? You may not pick up on it as much as your wife does, but your wife picks up on all this stuff. If you're in the 5 to 7 category, then you probably are struggling with one or the other. Either when you are impatient, you use words that could be hurtful, or they could just be perceived as aggressive. All right. Or your body language tells your wife, hey, I am not happy with this situation and I'm not being patient with you and I'm not giving you grace. So it's usually one or the other. All right. And then obviously 8 through 10, you're doing good, but you probably have those situations where your patience level is tested, but either you're passive and you're just like, okay, whatever. But nonetheless, if you are at an 8 through 10, you're patient. And the second part of this drill is going to be fairly simple for you, but it's important that you are aware of the situation or what happens in situations when your patience is tested. All right. So part 2, be mindful of situations this week that normally would drive you crazy and cause you to lose your patience. All right. So just be mindful. I'm not saying cause any situations where you test your patience out. Don't do that. But if you come across a situation where your patience gets tested, then what I want you to do is hit the pause button for a second and say, okay, am I in a situation where my patience is tested? If the answer to that is yes, then I need to pay attention to what I do very carefully for the next couple moments or however long this situation lasts. All right. Second step, if you are in the range of 1 to 4 on your patience, what I want you to do is pay attention to your body language and your word selection. Now, if you didn't say anything, I want you to think about the words that you just naturally want to say. All right. Those are typically the words that are causing you to not be the most patient person. Then I want you to remember back to the first note that I gave about being patient and give grace and forgive your wife instantly. Okay. Very important. All 3 of these stages, I want you guys to forgive your wife instantly. As soon as you feel your patience being tested, say, hey, you know what? I'm not holding this against you, honey. This is not something I'm going to hold against you. Even if it is her fault, right? Don't tell yourself a lie. This isn't your fault. But instead, what you want to do is say, I'm not going to hold this against you. Instead, I'm going to find something else to do. And I'm going to be more patient. Now, if the situation is a conversation that's frustrating you, then you have to say, okay, what is it that's frustrating me about this conversation? That's what it is. Okay, I'm going to forgive you for this and then address that conversation. But I also want you to pay attention to your body language. All right. Your body language is so important. whatever you are doing physically, you are speaking verbally to your wife. So, find neutral body language, crossing your arms and pouting your face. And most of the body language happens in your face, right? Try not to do sarcastic smiling, things of that sort. Instead, think about genuinely how you want to respond to her, because a thoughtful face is almost neutral body language, and it'll diffuse a situation a lot faster than if you seemingly give in to what you think she wants to hear. All right. If you were in the 5 to 7 category, what I want you to do is pay attention again to your body language, your word selection. But again, you probably have already honed in on which one you need to work on the most. And I want you to just change the way that works, right? So if you know that you normally say some aggressive words when you are being impatient, I want you to, one, instantly forgive her, and then choose a more neutral approach on talking about the situation. And then if you are in the 8 to 10 range, again, these situations, what you're going to do is for you, you're probably already patient enough. Your body language, typically, anyone who's in the 8 to 10 range, what I found is their body language is good to go. Most of the time in this situation, it is the words, because a lot of people, we learn to master how our bodies work, but we don't pay attention to the things that come out of our mouth as much. And we word vomit. Or we say the first thing that comes to our mind, and we don't pay attention to how that will be perceived by our spouse. And so in this situation, you're probably, and this is a very generalized statement. If you're in the 8 to 10 range, it's probably your words. Now, here's the note. The number you got is just your overall average. And this is typically, like when we were talking about the listening styles, there's a primary listening style that you have, but you use all 4 of the listening styles throughout the day, and definitely throughout your life. Same concept goes here. Based on the situation, your patience level or your tolerance to a situation will determine which range you fall in for your patience level. Okay? And what I want you to do is react to the situation based off of your tolerance average. So if the situation leads you to be in a 1 to 4 range, then I want you to respond to the situation as if your average is 1 to 4. And if the situation leads you to 8 to 10, but your average was 1 to 4, then respond to the situation as an 8 to 10 category. All right. There's nothing wrong with this fluctuating thing, because over time we learn patience in different areas of our lives. Right. I used to be impatient when I said, "Hey, I'm ready to go." My wife was still getting ready, and now, before I used to be in a 1 to 4, I had the body language and I had the words, right? Now that's more of an 8 to 10 to me. If she's not ready, it's okay. I'm going to just go sit down and do something else and wait until she's ready to go, because I'm not concerned about it. Typically, again, there are very few places that we go that we have to be there right at that time. So I'm not overly concerned. Do I like to be on time? Absolutely. I actually like to be early to places. I don't like to be on time. I like to be 10 minutes before the time I was supposed to be there. Not everyone has that same thought process, but it's all right. Now, here's the deal. The goal for this drill is to become mindful of your body language and your word selection when you get upset or annoyed with your wife. Learning to control both of these things will help you communicate your feelings in a less aggressive manner and improve your influence in your marriage. We want to have heavy influence in our marriage. But if you don't learn how to control your word selection, your body language, and especially with your patience, you will influence your marriage, absolutely, but not in a positive way that you want to take your marriage. So my recommendation is that you learn how to manage your patience. And this week, just be mindful. And even if you don't necessarily respond, I mean, when we talked about managing conflict in one of my earlier episodes, I discussed you always have to respond. You don't always have to respond immediately. Okay, that's important. You will respond, and your response is going to determine a lot of where your influence goes and your relationship goes. However, you may not respond as much or as fast as the situation developed. And that's okay. Moral of the story, if you are at least mindful of the things that annoy you the most, and most of us already know the things that annoy us the most, right? But if you don't, become mindful. And these are things that you write down in your wife journal, really only the most annoying things, all right? Now, this isn't to write it down so you can point it out to your wife later. What you're really doing is you're writing it down to understand, so that way you can come back and understand why this annoys you and how you can overcome it. But also using it as a research method so you can understand what is going on with your wife and why she continues to do this thing. Because you may find that she does this because of something you do, in which case you can absolutely control yourself. So then you can change what you do, which changes what she does. In turn, you don't have to be annoyed about something that she used to do. All right. So that's why we want to write it down in our wife journal. And really, that can go in the far back of the journal. It doesn't need to be up front with all the positive things and the way that we see our wives. That can go on a sheet of paper where you can eventually rip that thing out and burn it. Because what you want to figure out is, how is this developing and why does this bother me so much? And don't just settle with the surface answer, this bothers me because I want it to be this way. Why do you want it to be that way? What other ways are acceptable? Is there only one acceptable way? Why is there only one acceptable way? Like, go deeper than this bothers me because it just does. That's like child's play. All right. We're adults. We are husbands, and we want to find ways to love our wife every day. So, guys, this has been a long episode, but I think that lots of value-added content here. So I am excited to get back into the rotation and get these episodes pumped out. And, just hearing your guys' wins across the globe when it comes to marriage. So I'm excited to be back and helping out as many husbands as possible, even if it's only one. But you guys are awesome. Thank you for listening in. And until the next time, I want you guys to find a way to love your wife each and every day. Peace out.